I don't know about you, but how I have personally felt every time I hear the media speculate about a Labour leadership contest, which, by the way, they have done constantly over the past year, is please, God, no. Politicians, just do your jobs, stop playing politics and govern. I think I talked about this when we covered the Peter Mandelson affair. Mandelson was Starmer's chosen ambassador to the US, but after the extent of his links to Jeffrey Epstein came out, he nearly became Starmer's downfall. And yes, it was awful he was appointed despite his proximity to Epstein. But the media storm that broke out was just so insincere. MPs and news outlets who'd taken no issue with Mandelson's appointment at the time, even applauded it, milked the opportunity to perform outrage while clearly just fishing for a leadership contest. And I just felt, do you really care about us? Do you really care about Epstein's victims? Do you really care about corruption and elitism? Or do you just care about what you can gain politically? And for the journalists, about how many juicy headlines you could get out of government collapse. Over this past fortnight, I've had the same gut feeling about Starmer's resignation. How do you feel?
Honestly, I do want Starmer gone. I think he deserves to go, but I am also just exhausted about the upcoming PM deciding furore. Like, if I'm honest, I just feel like we're just going to get more of the same. You know, nothing's going to change.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe I am in a minority. I know that Starmer is deeply unpopular. I have serious grievances with him myself. But ultimately, I think that politics should be about governance, and that most of the time, the party mechanics should be behind the scenes, not centre stage.
It does feel like Westminster is always centre stage.
And you know what? It has been like that for a long time now. We're about to have seen 7 prime ministers in 10 years, a period that should have turned over only 3 if it was business as usual. The key point here is that we have a problem in our politics. Our system is increasingly unstable. Instability costs us a lot. It costs the most vulnerable people in society the most. So we need to work out what's going wrong. And indeed, you'll have seen every paper this week ask that question. What went wrong? And they identify many valid reasons. But one key reason was distinctly missing: itself.
Okay, elaborate.
So I think the most obvious way our media destabilizes politics is the way that we allocate headlines. We, and by we I mean journalists, we reward whichever politicians will give us the most clicks, not the most meaningful change for the public. This very directly incentivizes our leaders to channel more energy into politics than policy. But another issue I see with our political media is that I think they think everyone is obsessed as they are with Westminster gossip. And actually, most people in this country don't constantly want to know how many MPs are bitching about their leader at any given time. Most people would rather know how politicians are getting on with their actual day jobs outside Westminster in their constituencies and how it's going to affect their household bills and job security and human rights and so on and so forth. And that's why I think a lot of Brits will have actually been shocked at the spiralling events of Starmer's resignation last week. Most of them don't pay attention to Westminster gossip until it forces them to go to the polls yet again to elect another leader just so the media can spend most of their leadership speculating about when it will end.
Yeah, honestly, the speculation has already started for Andy Burnham and he hasn't even begun.
I know. I just listened to this Burnham bitch session on Times Radio in which political correspondent Charlotte Ivers literally said, I don't know why, but everything he does annoys me. I'm not even going to give him a chance.
Why are we so desperate for another failed leadership? Still, I think many political correspondents would take issue with your characterization of their coverage as Westminster gossip.
And yet, that's exactly what a lot of it is. Obviously, not all of it. To be clear, political correspondents do a lot of vital work. They're generally very clever people, and I actually find their analysis stimulating and interesting. But it's curious that in no other area of journalism do you regularly see anonymous opinions and unverified rumours elevated to the status of news. This is common practice in political reporting, and they're not shy about it. And that brings me on to the point that struck me the most of all, reading and watching and listening to hours and hours of our political media's analysis about what went wrong for Starmer, which I did. It was fun. And that was the sheer lack of awareness from any of the people speaking about the role they themselves may have played in creating that very outcome. If we are going to dedicate thousands of words to examining why Starmer's leadership collapsed, I think one factor that should at least be mentioned is the incessant media speculation that has haunted him for most of his leadership. And after a decade of instability, maybe we should examine whether this persistent stream of speculative commentary is really in the public interest.
Right, because it may not be in the public interest to publish some plot against the Prime Minister, but it's definitely in someone's interest.
Exactly. Ambitious politicians exploit the media's desire for juicy headlines. They instrumentalize journalists, not to chronicle events for the public's benefit, but to manipulate events, often at the public's expense. This is undeniable. It's also undeniable journalists often allow themselves to be instrumentalized so that they get the scoop instead of their competitors. And it's also undeniable that media moguls are often co-conspirators in their news outlets' instrumentalization because they'd rather see their man inside than see whoever was actually elected to be inside succeed for the good of us all.
Our political media often accuse politicians of Westminster elitism, but it sounds like it's as much a problem in our political media.
Massively. The same class that dominates Westminster also dominates our media, right? And yes, I am among that class. And what I perpetually see in these circles is the fundamentally elitist approach to politics. Politics as an intellectual exercise, a game of thrones, not an existential reality in which people's day-to-day well-being depends on actual stability, actual leadership, and actual evidence-based change. It focused almost entirely on very Westminster-centric issues. Starmer fell because of all of his U-turns, his lack of charisma, his dodgy ambassador appointment, the backbencher rebellions. But almost none of the analysis looked at the lived realities of British people beyond the walls of Westminster in seeking to explain why Starmer's party clearly decided he couldn't win them another election. Realities like racist violence on the streets, for the third summit in a row. Brits, I think, have become genuinely alarmed witnessing these scenes about what reform could do to the country. I think maybe the main reason Starmer fell is that many people are now prepared to get behind anyone who is most likely to prevent reform from coming in, i.e. not Keir Starmer. This was reflected in the Makerfield by-election, in which the Tories, Lib Dems and Greens combined got just 3.3% of votes. It's proof that people voted tactically for whoever would keep reform out. And what about realities like the fact that despite quartering net immigration, Labour has failed to make a dent in the cost of living crisis. Shock horror, maybe immigration wasn't the problem. Or realities like us watching police arrest thousands of pensioners while violence against women goes uninvestigated, while the Prime Minister holds private meetings with the arms firms, funneling weapons to Gaza, where 20,000 children have been killed. In the first 24 hours of Starmer resigning, Media Lens counted 1,485 mentions of him. Only 30 had any reference to Gaza. This rupture is not a matter of opinion. In the 2024 general election, 5 sitting Labour MPs were defeated by pro-Gaza independents. Labour's share of the Muslim vote, historically one of their most reliable blocs, has fallen from over 60% in 2019 to just 33%. The government's own figures show that almost half of religiously aggravated crimes are against Muslims. That's the biggest bloc. For a lot of people in this country, politics is not about gossip or games.